Welcome, everyone. My name is Mansi, and I'm happy to moderate this panel discussion and webinar on the SCA USA chapter. I'm really happy to be here. This has been a very long process of getting a lot of community input, a lot of voices to help us in creating the SCA USA chapter structure. What we're going to do on this webinar is we'll do a quick round of introductions. We're going to go through the structure and the nomination and election process, and then we're going to leave a lot of time towards the end for question and answers so that the community, whoever's joining us on this call, can all give us input, feedback, questions. We'll take it all. So to kick off the intros, I wanted to show this page and then go ahead, everyone, with your individual intros. Start with Jen.
All right. Hi, I'm Jen Apodaca. I am the Vice Chair of the Unified Coffee Roasters Guild. I'm from Oakland, California. I work for Royal Coffee. I'm a roaster educator, and I'm like a community member in our Bay Area coffee community.
I'll go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Laila Ghambari. I'm the Director of Education for Stumptown Coffee Roasters in Portland, Oregon. I served 5 years on the Barista Guild of America Executive Council. I cycled off this last April. And yeah, that's kind of my story.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marcus Boni. I am the Director of Brand and Marketing with Malkunig USA. I've been around the coffee world for quite some time. I'm really particularly old, but really happy to be here. I represent, both in my experience and with the company I currently work for, organizations that participate in the SCA, both with providing equipment, engaging on a broader level from exhibiting at different conferences, supporting through different sponsorships, and having great partnerships within the coffee industry.
Me, Mike Ebert, founder of Fire Dancer Coffee Consultants, focused on education and consulting in the coffee chain. Also a past president of the old SCAA and the founding chair of the Roasters Guild. And I'm here because I complained the most to Mansi about the need for a chapter, so she put me to work. So here I am.
Hi, I'm Miguel Vicuna. I'm the quality specialist and educator for Sweet Bloom Coffee Roasters in Denver. I'm also the current U.S. Coffee Competitions chair and have served alongside Laila for, 6 years, probably more, within the BGA, and then also World Coffee Events representative and a co-chair for the barista education modules for the SCA. And I'm really stoked to be on this call with all of you today.
Thank you. And I'm Mansi. I'm the North America Experience Director for SCA. Many of you might know me from membership because I served the SCA membership for 8 years before this role. I'm happy to work on this initiative for the SCA. It's been a lot of my favorite type of work, of talking to different people, getting their input. And so I want to remind people as we go through the webinar that this is a collective work of a lot of different opinions and voices, perspectives. And we're presenting this because there's still a lot more to shape and mold for the rest of the work that we want to do here, focused around the US membership. I will mention one thing, that these representatives that are on the panel and on the webinar today are not our leadership. We are opening up that process to everyone to be involved in, both from a nominations perspective and a voting perspective. So they're just here because they're nice and friendly folks that represent awesome perspectives within our membership community. And then I asked them to as well. So thank you, all of you. So we'll move forward and I'll hand over the floor to Marcus and Jen.
Great. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. We'll start by just giving a nice glimpse into what an SCA chapter is, where they've existed. Prior to the merger of both the SCAA and the SCAE, chapters existed throughout the globe, largely focused on reporting up into one of the associations, but really to be the voice, to be the localized group and group of leaderships that really drove specialty coffee presence inside each of their localized communities. Largely with the vast and diverse countries and national structures that existed prior to the merger, those different bodies existed and really had different goals, all based off of their own individual communities that they were serving, but really then ramping up into the structures for the associations that they would help support too. They were diverse in both the types of individuals that would help support the efforts in each individual chapter, as well as the organizations that chose to participate in different levels of engagement inside of each of those chapters too. And really, they were organized to give voice to their membership inside of each of those each of those regions or each of those nations. That voice then drove the initiative on a very localized level to be aligned to the associations that they were helping support, but then also meeting the needs, defining and meeting the needs of their organization on a more local level. Why do they exist? For those specific reasons, making sure that there's always an opportunity for the membership of each of those different regions to engage with, so that they are not only kind of participating at a level that helps support, you know, different functions of each of their organizations, but helps bring their community together. And also, of course, then to align to a specific points of execution, whether it's through competitions, whether it's through different educational events, making sure that those are executed inside of their regions to really to deliver on the promise of both the organization and of the needs of their membership too. Jen, you want to take that next slide?
Okay. So let's see. So what will the USA chapter do? Is that where we're at? I'm so sorry. So beyond connecting us to more like local activities, this is where we will be doing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I have a lot of really loud noises around here. I'm gonna mute at the moment. I apologize.
No worries. I'll take it from there. Really, what will the SCA chapter do is similar in structure to what other chapters have done across the globe previously. Really provide that support for local regional groups. Yes, the USA is quite large, but the great thing is that there are some groups in different regions that are already activated to some degree, and the chapter will really be founded to help support that localized effort. And to be led by certain leaderships, individuals in their volunteer capacity, to not only continue to I guess, provide the right kind of vision, set the right kind of structure in place to move that vision forward, and then continuously engage and help support the membership that's existing throughout their chapter. They will have resources, event templates, and other types of support coming from the SCA itself. And really, in these initial phases of this chapter coming together for the US, it's a great forming phase, right? We're here to kind of identify the right leadership, put clarity around how the chapter can be organized in a way that helps deliver on goals for that national chapter, look at what's working inside of that, and then be the advocates for that activity throughout the country on more localized efforts. I hear quite a bit and see quite a bit, in some cases, frustration, commentary, feedback around as the joined merged association continues to evolve and grow and learn from that process, a process that I think we can all agree was a longer process than maybe what we originally thought, making sure that the localized effort doesn't get lost in that approach. And I think that's a key part to kicking off this US chapter as the makeup of our leadership of the SCA changes, as we continue to really look at the entire globe and how we can service that globe. We want to ensure that the US doesn't lose its opportunity to not only serve the membership that exists inside of that community, but also continue to grow specialty coffee awareness throughout the US. This is a very appropriate home for the US Competitions Committee, of course, already kind of operating in its own world today and based off of a similar, somewhat inherited structure that existed, really bringing that into the fold of the US chapter to make sure that it's sustainable, it's bringing in a diverse voice into that group, and then also continues to carry it forward in a strategic and meaningful way. And then, of course, I've commented on this several times, this is the official voice for the USA. One thing that's important to note is that this chapter becomes the official conduit into the SCA itself. And this chapter is supremely founded on ensuring that it's representing, again, in a very diverse way from individuals and organizations coming together to really to feed into the SCA as a whole and to ensure that there's activation and engagement happening at that localized level.
Awesome. And we'll take questions after. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to offer my friends here, Mike, Miguel, Laila, Jen, any other points that we want to just touch on there?
Yeah, this is probably the most important that everybody's been wondering, like what is going to happen. So I appreciate all of that, Marcus. That was great. And like I was just going to mention that we can take questions after as well, but if any of the panelists want to jump in before I go to the structure, which is another big question that comes up often.
I think that this part of, why we are like forming a chapter and what will the chapter do, like there's a lot of very sort of like large ideas about why it's necessary. Definitely Marcus spoke to the fact that there were a lot of frustrated people who felt that they lost a voice through unification. And I think we all, in all of us US members experienced that or had conversations with other members. And so the idea that we are forming this chapter is fantastic. And what's really exciting is that even though there already is a process for forming a chapter, the US is unique. And this gives us an opportunity to see what type of chapter, because the pre-existing chapter format may not have really worked for a country of our size and a membership of our size. And so a lot of thought has gone into from several people, several US members, about what a good chapter would look like that would really serve us. And so I think that it's going to be really exciting to watch that play out.
Yeah, and I think, Mansi, this will be a good segue into the next section, but it's important for United States members of this, especially Coffee Association, to recognize that the United States is the largest demographic of members, and that we have a very big and important voice, and that this US chapter is really going to hone that voice and give it leadership and direction and strategy. And so it's a really important thing that we move forward in this direction. I mean, if I'm correct, I believe we're twice as large as the next largest chapter. And so we're a very big voice, and this is going to be an important thing to kind of take those voices and aggregate them. And in terms of the structure, we also need to be very aware that the United States does not speak as one voice. And so we all have different opinions, we have different backgrounds, we have different experiences. And so beyond just being a national chapter, it's important that we get more granular than that, more community focused and more localized, so that everybody has a different voice depending on where they are located within the United States, what sector of the specialty coffee industry they represent, and so on. So the way that the structure will work is that there will be a national coordinator that will sort of oversee the different coordinators and the group, and sort of be the leader and the visionary and be that direct connection point to the association and the board and other chapters and so on. And so they're really kind of represented as the leader and driving force. And so that's going to be a really big job and a really important job that I'm very excited to see who takes on that role. Underneath that person will be regional coordinators. They're broken down into 6 different regions: Northwest, Southwest, North Central, South Central, Northeast, and Southeast. Miguel and I both worked on the Barista Guild of America back when it used to have chapter representatives, and it was structured the same way. And these people are overseeing their entire region. They're meant to be connecting with the communities within their region and being the voice for the region in which they fall into. One thing that's really important to recognize is that this is not the Barista Guild, this is not the Roasters Guild, this is not the Tech Guild, this is the United States Specialty Coffee chapter. And so the people that represent these groups should be in any section of the specialty coffee industry, from baristas to roasters to coffee shop owners to anything. And that really is important as we move forward, and Mike is going to go over this, but when we go into the nominations and elections process, it's important for us to recognize that we really want to have diverse representation in that group of people. And so whatever group you represent, you probably want to be advocating for that group, but we also want to think holistically that we want many different voices from profession to backgrounds and so on represented in that group. And so as you're nominating people and making your voting decisions, to be thinking about this as a US chapter, and what do we really want to, how do we want to represent ourselves as the United States will be really important. Underneath those regional coordinators, there will be up to 15 spots for community coordinators. And I think that this is probably the part that I'm most excited to see grow. And these are people that are going to represent their individual communities. So there's already a ton of coffee community groups throughout the United States. And these are opportunities for those people to get involved in deciding on what the structure is and what kind of events we want to have and how we want to connect together and be making really important decisions for this chapter. And so you might be someone that's listening right now that already is involved in a community group, and you're sort of, you're being piqued by this, of like, maybe this is something that you want to be involved in. Again, this can be baristas, this can be roasters, this can be absolutely anybody that feels like they have a really strong community, that they're growing their community, they're driving their community, and they want to be a voice in this. And so imagine it kind of being that any sort of community chapters within the Northwest are going to kind of be connecting with their Northwest chapter representative. And then that regional chapter representative is going to be connecting with that national coordinator, and obviously having meetings and so on as all the regions connecting and so on. One thing I do want to point out, I've been volunteering for the Specialty Coffee Association for a very, very long time and held positions on the Barista Guild and so on. These are very big positions, and they're a big time commitment, a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of your time is going to be put into this. And so as you're starting to think about whether or not you want to participate on this, I think it's important to analyze if you have the bandwidth and the time, and that you think that your voice is something that you want to put in there and drive this forward. This is going to take a lot of energy and a lot of passion, and it's going to do some really amazing things for our community. But really just think about that. And also, I know it's easy to immediately kind of look to those who have already been involved in, whether it's the guilds or so on. But I also think this is a really cool opportunity for us to get some new voices involved. And so whether or not you've ever participated in any sort of especially coffee association events or so on, if you believe that you're a leader and a strong voice in this community, then you should be participating in this. And so I hope that we have tons and tons and tons of nominations across the United States. And so I'm going to kick it over to Miguel to talk about the competitions committee coordinator.
Yeah, and so the competitions coordinator is kind of already a position that's being done. I'm the current US chair for the competitions committee. And I think what we've been doing within the last 2 years is exactly what we want to see continue happening moving forward within this chapter structure, with the idea of making things or making competitions more accessible to as many competitors as possible, with the idea of introducing prelims now that we have the qualifier events, you know, kind of always expanding on what we can do to help incorporate and access as much as our membership as possible. So yeah, the competitions committee is already kind of structured within all the respected competitions: roasting, brewers, barista, cup tasters, and now coffee and good spirits. Yeah, so the coordinator for the competitions kind of oversees all that and has like that clear vision of how to make competitions more inclusive and have that vision moving forward within the US, and how can we create a fantastic community and keep growing within competitions. So not much is going to be changing there, but if you do want to get involved in that kind of side, really sparks an interest, we're always accepting and wanting to find new voices for some of these subcommittees within the competitions. And, you know, I think now with this structure, a lot of like the prelims that we did host in the last 2 years are going to have that much more support, not just within the competition of a prelim, but now we have community coordinators possibly helping create more content outside of competitions at prelims, or regional coordinators really kind of honing their regions and making things better. So I think this new structure is going to really make more events more engaging, and we can kind of find a better vision future moving forward.
Yeah, that's perfect. And of these positions, we're going to go into the the nominations and voting structure, but competitions coordinator is the only one that is an appointment, because we have already this committee. So that chair will go ahead and accept this competitions coordinator position as well when they transition. So Miguel will be cycling off and a new person will be coming through.
Yeah, it's probably about time. I don't know. I'm just joking.
One more slide. So Mike, I'm going to give the floor to you to help us zone in on what the timeline looks like and what these things on the screen mean.
Thank you, Mansi. Good afternoon or morning, depending where you're at, everyone. So as discussed, you know, the first stage is occurring today, the webinar to kind of understand the process and what we're doing. Nominations will open up on January 21st. You can nominate yourself or anyone else who is a member. This is a perfect chance because, you know, I got involved with this because I started complaining about our local voice, and Mansi drags me in, which I'm happy to do because it's Mansi. But I've been hearing lots of angst from many members over the merger and not being heard. This is your chance to do something about it and get involved. So nominations will start January 21st. There is no nominating committee, i.e. there's nobody going to be looking at this and hand-picking the people they choose. Anyone who gets nominated will get put on the slate, regardless of number of nominations a person receives, okay? So the election then will open February 11th and close the 22nd, and official announcement will be March 1st, and that's the process. It'll all be done electronically. If you nominate yourself, you will be asked for a short bio and answer some questions, kind of under the understanding to know, prepare and make sure you're aware of what you're getting yourself into. As a few people have stated already, this is somebody who has volunteered for many years. This takes a large effort. And, you know, I kind of look at it as, to quote somebody famous, it's not what the association is going to do for me, it's what I'm going to do for the association. And it's really the only way you can kind of look at this sort of commitment and survive it. And I think be in the right frame of mind. So with that, I think I covered everything, Mansi.
Yeah, I think one more thing that I might mention is people might be wondering who can be nominated. And if, in case you don't know, you might want to put somebody into the nominations. And don't worry if you don't know their member number or their information. If somebody else nominates you, the SCA staff will be following up to confirm that you do want to proceed with running in the election. So, you know, that's kind of important. And anybody can run in this election as long as you're a member. And that doesn't get into specifics of you must be this type of member. Any member, if you work for a member company, that counts. If you're a company individual member, that counts. Anybody can run. The votes are for any paying member. So SCA, there's all of the guilds, any of those memberships count when you're going to be voting. It's a very quick process by design because there's not much we can do in just talking about this. We need this group to be elected, come forward, and help us kind of go into the next steps of what are we going to do. So I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that. And then I wanted to go into the, you might have seen a little bit of about this in maybe social media, or maybe you attended one. We've been supporting local communities and hosting info sessions or town halls, as some of them have liked to call it. We had one right before the end of the year in Denver when RMCCA helped to organize that at the competitions. We had another one hosted by the Austin Coffee Society. Most recently, Nashville Coffee Collective got together at the competitions as well. You see these on the screen that are coming up. This is a completely member-led effort. Anybody can host one of these. You don't have to have a specific organization or, you know, anybody could do this. I'm happy to help anybody that wants more information on how to host this, support you in getting it organized, having maybe a staff person or a board member come out to that event if you would like that, or if you want to just have it as a members only thing, that's fine too. It's important that we spread the word about what is happening just to make sure that people are aware about this. So as much as we can email and post about it on social media, we all know that word of mouth is completely effective, and we want to make sure we utilize that channel as well. So I encourage anybody that would like to participate in one of these. We've been posting them on the SCA US chapter social media sites, but we also, you know, are taking new ones. And if you're just kind of curious of how to host one, that's also available. Yeah, and I think we're going to go into the Q&A. So there is a area on, if you're utilizing the GoToMeeting or the GoToWebinar link and, you know, getting involved in this, you can type in your question and we will read your question. We won't be mentioning names because this is a recorded session and, you know, we don't have permission from everyone, but we will be mentioning the questions there. One of the things that has come up, giving people a chance to kind of put in their questions. But I know that these info sessions have happened, so I can definitely let you know about some of the questions that have come up. It's, you know, I think there's been a lot of questions around, well, how does this leadership group work? Do they have to follow what the other chapters are doing or how they do it? And I know we mentioned this a bit, but that's the point, that this is a brand new chapter for the SCA. It's a branch office of the SCA as well. So all of the staff that supports the US activities, whether that be a competition, whether that be US based membership, whether that's our communication staff, marketing staff, all of that staff is still here. We still have our office in Santa Ana, and we're ready to support this group. What this group is going to bring, the elected group is going to bring to us is clarity around the direction to take on most of our decisions, which is most exciting. So I want to emphasize that while it is important from a vision, creative standpoint, you're not expected to make this your job. The SCA staff is still here to support you in that. I think that's important because I don't want people to run away from this and say, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is not a volunteer position. It very much is a volunteer position. You're being asked to be a leader, not do the job of this. So I wanted to mention that. Also make sure that people know that you are not expected to pay more for a chapter or anything like that. This is part of the budget cycle for SCA. So we have, this question has come up, it's kind of been approached already. So there's no additional fee for this. This is part of SCA. So what you already pay for your membership dues, that's already covered in here. I don't know if our panelists have any questions while we wait for other questions to come through, but I know we had some discussions around this, and I can always pull out some more info session questions, but just opening the floor. I know you all are muted.
I might just say, like, Mansi, from your opinion, or from anybody's opinion, sort of what would make somebody a good candidate for being one of these elected leadership positions?
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts and suggestions, but does anyone want to answer that from the panel?
Yeah, I think it's just someone who has a clear vision and is willing to do a lot of heavy lifting and work and delegation. And I also think connections. I think being able to kind of identify who needs to be involved and get the conversation going. So I think that's kind of step one for one of these positions, is really kind of having a well-connected, but also be able to connect people together to kind of create a lot of stuff forward.
Yeah, I think what's important here is, number one, that it's a diverse group of individuals. To some earlier comments that were made, if you haven't been in a leadership position before in the past or volunteered at this level before, I think what really we're looking for, and to really populate this list of leadership, and what our membership should be looking for, is a group that represents that voice in a wide variety of circumstances and backgrounds. I also, to be honest, what's great about this in those positions that are available is that there's multiple levels of both time commitment, skill set required, and things that you just naturally enjoy doing, for you to kind of plug that in based off of the role and the description of the role and what's required of that role too. What I think is pretty freaking amazing is that this is like a new way to kind of engage yourself in the association, right? Like, we've gone through a lot of change, and in particular in the US, it was a little bit more drastic for us in some ways, where, okay, we used to be this one group that kind of operated on our own, and then we were really happy and moving forward. And then as we merged into this larger group, maybe it didn't always feel like there was a clear ability for us to engage in a meaningful way. At least I'm telling my personal story. And in some of those instances, it maybe felt like, well, this was the last time we were doing this, or this is the last time this group is coming together, what have you. This is a great opportunity to say, look, this is the vision for the future. This is the opportunity for the future that exists. This is a new way for me to engage in a way that really kind of shapes the future of what's to come. And to me, that's really inspiring, that I can kind of no longer have to listen to, oh, this is the last time something like this is happening, and more of, here's the first opportunity for us to chart the new course for what it means for the United States too.
Yeah, I would like to talk on that. Like, I was writing down the same thing. If you're the type of person that is excited to take on a new role that's never existed, then this is the type of work, especially in this sort of like founding leadership of this chapter. Being elected to any of those positions, you're not replacing somebody who already has a format or a list of tasks that you need to do. This is all, there's a general outline, and making all of those contacts and connections and deciding what's the most important thing to focus on for the US chapter. Like, all of those things will be just be a lot of like heavy lifting in the beginning. And if that's something that makes you excited and doesn't deter you from wanting to participate, I think that you're probably the right type of person to be in this leadership.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I would just add that I've worked with a lot of the leadership groups. I mean, that's part of my role here at SCA. And I think the most successful leaders, you don't have to have any experience in that. I think you start to see how you can become a better leader by working with others. And the most successful ones that I've seen and the ones that have grown a lot, I think it's fascinating to see how they are developing those strengths of their own through just the mere act of building consensus. You know, it's important to recognize it's not just your personal opinion. You're trying to get the perspective of everyone in the community and to be able to represent that. So we do have a few questions that came through, so I want to read those out loud. We have, what will be the term for the elected representatives? Do you have ideas on how will the U.S. operate with the other guilds, councils, and committees of the SCA? So the terms, that's a good one. We missed that one. Just so everyone knows, we are going to have a roles and responsibilities PDF that will go out and make sure that everyone has access to that. We're going to post these on social media, so you will have more of a, we just mentioned some bullet points per roles and responsibilities, but there is obviously more that we have written out. Again, there are 34 other chapters that exist, so we took a lot of what the existing structure is, but then also better defined it for the U.S. Membership group. So we will have 2-year terms for every position. And then just to, anyone else can answer this, the second part of the question was, do you have ideas on how the U.S. Chapter will operate with the other guilds, councils, and committees? Yeah.
I think that with, being a part of the process of unifying the Coffee Roasters Guild was, it is a difficult task. You have people from all over the globe, and trying to get together at a time when it is convenient for everyone to have these very important conversations. Also, working with people that you've never worked with before and building trust, so I think all of that stuff has taken a long time. And one thing that we've learned over this past year is that like the guild, and especially the Unified Guild, can't do anything on a local level without, chapter, like this type of like chapter support, without national chapters, without regional groups. Specifically how regional coordinators or the U.S. chapter in particular would work with the CRG Advisory Council, probably through our membership committee. We have lots of people on the membership committee. We try and amplify any events that are happening on a regional level. We want to be in touch. We want to help promote your events. We want to assist in any way we can, but we definitely don't want to take them over. So there is a channel of communication and support as much as we can do.
I just wanted to kind of address that second part of the question, which is, do you have any idea how the U.S. chapter will operate with the other guilds, councils, and committees? And this is something that this group kind of talked about before the call about, this is a new structure. And so this is a member-driven structure. And I believe that the members through the regional coordinators are really going to tell us what we need to do next. And so if that is that our U.S. group really wants to create a chapter for the Barista Guild or so on and so forth, that the community is going to lead us in that direction. And so there's a lot of things that we're going to walk into this that are not in place now that will come to happen over time through the voices that we hear. But I think it's also important to remember that the way this will work is that members of the association within the United States will be a part of this chapter automatically by being members of the association, and they'll be members of the association through barista or roaster and the different sections in which you can become a member. So we're automatically going to have SCA members that are barista members and part of the Barista Guild and part of the Roasters Guild and so on. So the voices that are going to be in our community are already represented in those guilds in that way. And so, you know, that's going to be a natural progression because they're already involved in those guilds through that. So I think some of this is going to be TBD, which is what makes it really exciting, is how do we want this to function? And that's where these elected leaders are really going to get to drive that conversation.
We have a question around how many hours per week would you expect to spend volunteering in these positions? And I'm just going to give the official response that we give to committee council members, and then our panelists might have some different thoughts on that, but we say about 10 hours a month. Because you have at least one monthly call, you might have an additional committee call, and then some work that goes in the pre and post work. That's just an estimate. You know, again, this is a whole new thing. We don't have the exact, you know, schedule laid out of how we will work. The elected leadership will very much make decisions around, we will have this many calls or we will have this many meetings, but just as a generalization from other groups.
Hey, Mansi, to piggyback off of that, you know, I agree with the 10 hours, by the way. Sometimes I go way over and I really should not, you know, but it depends on some things you're more passionate about than others. But also a question I have is, will there be is there a financial commitment as well being involved, you know, having to go to a meeting or being at events like that might be something that is not supported, or that's my question.
No, yeah, I mean, actually, the guilds have seen a little bit of change in this from what we were doing before unification, where some meetings were covered, some meetings were not. But after that, we have definitely gotten better at ensuring that, you know, again, the leadership defines this of how many times we're going to meet, but then we budget for that. And we are able to then utilize that budget in that fashion, right? So we know that for the guild leadership, at least right now, that there's 2 in-person meetings a year, and we budget for that. So there's not an out-of-pocket expense. And then, you know, the rest of them are phone calls or committee meetings. Maybe there's some event support that is pulled resources, right? We pull these resources together. And we always work with our leadership on that. But I think for this group, because it's so different and so new, there's not really that, you know, we're going to have to really spend some time in proper planning. And that will ensure that nobody has to do that. I think that can go as extended as you want to get in the regional coordinators and how they're going to travel within their region as well, right? It's not just our meetings as a whole committee. It might be also specific to how we're going to support that person that's responsible for a good amount of states within a region.
So it sounds like you're kind of saying that if financial concerns were there for somebody who was thinking to nominate themselves or nominate someone else, they really shouldn't take that into too much consideration because those things haven't been determined yet. So, you know, if you're still passionate and you think that that might be an obstacle, still go through with the process and like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, kind of a thing. Does that sound right?
Exactly. And the in-person meetings, we already have some references for that. So that's not going to be something somebody would have to spend out of their own pockets or maybe their company's budget. We do have another couple of questions here. Let me read them.
I have something to add about the time.
Oh yeah,
commitment.
Go ahead.
As, I think the 10 hours, yeah, does make a lot of sense, but to just be aware, especially if you want to be the competitions coordinator, that kind of comes, those 10 hours can kind of come up pretty quick, especially with all the competitions and prelims and things like that. And I think it's more about how available you want to make yourself for all those. For me, it's always been really important to support as many events as possible. But that's like me personally, always wanting to be there and support as much as possible. But yeah, within the competitions, it's however you structure it. Within competitions, it's, 5 calls a month, an hour each. So there's 5 hours. And then, all the prep work and things like that go into certain events. And then, yeah, they kind of just come up Sometimes it could be a little slower, and then sometimes it's like, yeah, it's nonstop. It's really fun, and staying active and engaging in the community is, like, for me, never ending. But yeah, it's a worthwhile commitment for sure.
Yeah, that's great to mention. Thank you, Miguel. How much professional staff support will be made available to the regional groups, and how will professional staff be funded? Will the U.S. chapter and the regional coordinators be responsible for their own fundraising, administration, and operating budgets? So there's a couple of things there that I'm happy to first answer and then kind of open it up to panelists. But we've mentioned this before, and I'm happy to say this, that we have staff already that are dedicated towards U.S. activities. We actually allocate specific percentages out of our day-to-day, what we do towards this is just for U.S. membership, or this is just for this specific event in the U.S., like the competitions or anything that would come up. So just I hope everyone remembers that we had SCAA staff before, and we still have that staff. They are just operating here from wherever they are. They don't all work out of Santa Ana, but the point is that we haven't just kept that status quo. We've actually grown the support for staff members in the U.S. So it is important to recognize that we do have staff that supports this activity. What's going to be great is when the elected leadership comes through, they will help direct where those efforts are. Maybe more resources are put on, education or something else, and that's going to be something that the group is going to help us, direct us. The second part is, will regional coordinators be responsible for their own fundraising, administration, and operating budgets? We kind of mentioned this just a second ago that, we're going to have to build our budget. But the second part of that question, I do want to address that because this is a branch office of the SCA, it's a chapter, yes, but it's a branch office. The administration, operating budgets, and sponsorship, fundraising, all of that, that's still very much an SCA staff function. And the elected leadership will not have to worry about creating their own bank accounts and having their own, nonprofit status or anything like that. To do this business as a chapter, we have that legal structure already. We have the accounts already. And so we're not going to make this harder than it needs to be for that. So anybody else have anything on that? There's another question. Is it, I think we kind of answered this. I just want to make sure that we get through all the questions. So is it reasonable to expect there will be a planned face-to-face meeting? And yes, it's reasonable to expect that there would be a face-to-face meeting. Will it be at Expo? I don't know. I think the leadership group we're going to have our results in early March. So it might be too soon to meet by Expo. We might want to give that group, my suggestion would be at least give the group a few months of getting on calls together and, finding out some input from their regions and then coming together. But no decisions have been made. I think the elected leadership has control over when we meet. So there's a question here. I've heard there is a movement to form a new SCAA. Why is this chapter better than a whole new trade association? I think I have several thoughts on this, but I definitely want to open it up to the panelists first to maybe provide their own perspectives. Anybody? Might be muted. I'll give you my thoughts as a staff member. Somebody that has worked at the SCA for over 10 years. This isn't the first time this has come up, by the way, that, hey, we want to form our own thing. We want to have our own group. And there are communities that have their own ways of working and their own groups. I will just say this, that I think the US chapter being resourced under the SCA is a wise choice for our US membership group, and the staff that we have to support this is far more than any new group is going to be able to afford in the first few years. So just a very frank answer on that from my perspective as a staff member. I recognize that that's a limited opinion, though.
I would echo that completely. Just understanding when we started the Roasters Guild almost 20 some years ago, the idea was try to be completely as independent as we possibly could. And it would have never happened without the support and structure of the SCA. And while the idea sounds great, what will you really accomplish starting something new? I think you're throwing away a lot of history, a lot of experience, and an infrastructure that's just going to allow you to build a much stronger foundation of a chapter. With a lot less work. That said, like you've already alluded, the people that get elected here, there's going to be some work. But imagine starting something completely from scratch, from the legal, financial, and all the other aspects of it. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think
I would echo what Mike said to the point of no other organization is better suited to meet the needs in a faster manner than I think this association is. And let's remember, this is still our association. It's not SCA. It's still our association. And this is what everyone's asking for right now, whether it come across in more of a critique or it come across in just general concerns or fears as the merger continues to move on. This is the answer. While it may have taken a little bit longer to get here than we probably should have, that's okay. I still think that we're the best armed group of individuals to kick this off and to continue to be the voice behind this larger membership. And I think it's exactly the solution that's needed for us to solve where there are concerns existing today.
So I'll piggyback off all that. I think it's important to remember that even if you form a new organization, you're still dealing with the same coffee people, like here in the US. We're all still here, and so why would we form a separate organization? Also, when we look at a membership as large as the US, we're talking about a lot of people, and I think to what Laila said earlier, we all don't agree, and when there's a big group of people, we don't all agree, but we all have the same goals to further and make specialty coffee more sustainable. We all want jobs in the future. Like it takes us a long time for all of us to find moments to meet, to come to agreements, and to work things through. And I think that even though there has been some moments where people have been disappointed with the SCA, perhaps in the most recent past, I will say that the work that I did with like the ED&I task force for event site criteria and all of that, it's like, okay, we have a crisis, let's get together, let's form a group, let's all talk about it. What should we do? I mean, it was asking community, what should we do? And so I feel like maybe a lot of people knew that there were clear answers. It should have been, they're like, I know the answer, obviously we should do this, but we're a global organization and we need to listen to everybody and go through the motions of being courteous and respectful to each other and to come up with these ideas. So I feel that those same challenges with such a large membership like the United States are still going to be there, whether or not you're forming an organization with the SCA or without.
There's quite a few other questions, and I'm happy to go through them with our panelists. But just in case somebody, because we did manage this for 1 hour, just in case somebody does have to jump off, I think what we'll do, I can commit to doing this, is we'll take some of these questions and make sure that through our social media and through our communications, we'll be able to also ensure that everyone can see what questions were asked and what what the response was. So just in case you have to jump off. So this one's a long one, but so what I'm hearing, the national chapter of volunteers will be responsible for coffee competitions and coordinating, facilitating local programming. What else? Will local programming be the DIY member-driven event model? What professional assistance and support will be available to the regional coordinators and community organizers? There's a lot packed in there. Maybe first to start with the competitions, and Miguel, if you want to speak to a little bit of how it works right now with the competitions committee and the staff that support competitions. Just a brief, if you want to explain that a little bit, because the committee does not put on the logistics of the event yet.
Yeah, so this is kind of like where it's really fantastic to have the support from SCA. And then our own chapter is that the competitions committee does not have to go out and find venues or vet those kind of things moving forward. We have staff from SCA that kind of helps facilitate that, and nothing's going to be changing in that sense. I think this is kind of like where it can grow is like within the preliminaries is finding access points for those things to happen, but there's still staff liaison kind of helping facilitate those events moving forward. And I think, yeah, so nothing's really going to change on the competition schedule and things like that. But I think with the second part, I think this is exactly what this committee's main job is to figure out how do we go past what's already present, and those last two questions that's what the committee is supposed to, I think, tackle is what does it look like? We don't have to use the member-driven event model. We can create our own model. We can, yeah, it's essentially a clean slate, or use the slates that we have and improve them. So I think that's a really exciting thing to be part of.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. I think, obviously we have a lot of questions about how is this all going to work, but we also don't have a crystal ball to know how this is going to work. And this is the beginning of this new chapter. And so again, this is membership. This is our US chapter. This is the USA getting a chance to have their voice on what's important to them. And so our membership will decide how this is going to function and what's going to be the same and what's going to be different. And what's great about being able to do this in tandem with the association is that we have a ton of historical experience. And so we're not starting from scratch. We have a lot of historical knowledge that's going to drive this to allow us to start at a much more capable level. We've all, look at the Barista Guild, look at the Roasters Guild. They aren't the same as they were when they first started. They changed and shifted based on what membership wanted and needed. And that same thing is going to happen here. Again, this is not just a guilds thing. This is the entire US membership base. And so whether this is even, just local community events, I mean, who knows? Maybe that's not what we're looking for. So there's just so much possibility, and it's very easy to question what's going to happen. But I think that getting involved and participating in this and driving, letting your voice drive this forward, and these elected members being open and to hearing everyone's voices, and then being passionate about this and driving it forward is going to be what shapes this over the next couple of years.
Thank you. Kind of related to that, this question is, what is expected geographic scope for the community coordinator? Example, what would an entire state make sense as a community, or will the community coordinators have an opportunity to create organizational structure within their state, and are there sub-regions for a community? So there's a lot packed in there, but I think I understand the heart of the question is like, what does that structure look like? I just want to remind people that the regional coordinators actually have a regional location to manage. The community coordinators, you already represent a specific community or perspective. It's not regionally bound. It's groups that exist on Facebook or on LinkedIn, or groups that actually meet in person, but it's not, maybe they meet once a year at Expo or whatever. These groups already exist within our US structure. Our panelists might want to expand on that, but it's an opportunity for them to have a seat at the table and provide that community's perspective, which we've never had a formal way to invite them unless they got elected into a leadership position.
I think like an example of that could be, say somebody who works with like an organization that I founded, she's the roaster, and I'm not running for anything because I'm way too busy as vice chair. But say somebody who works with me with She's the Roaster is very interested in doing this type of work, and if they want to be a community coordinator, they might work with all of the different regional coordinators on how those regional coordinators could reach out to the community that they are representing. Does that, just as an example?
No, exactly. And the structure beyond that, if there's subcommittees or groups or whatnot, again, it's open. And I would just encourage all of us to think don't think there's a limit because this is how it was done before with another community or another group. Anything is possible for this. So we could have up to so many different subcommittees. What's exciting about that is there's a lot of opportunity to get involved. So one more question, kind of moving a little bit quicker through these. Will there be some sort of oversight or governance from SCA headquarters? For example, what if the Northwest chapter decided all the events should be in Washington, but somebody wants to do one in Idaho, and the local chapter decides they don't want to do it? How do we ensure equal representation? That's a good question. I think a reminder that it's a whole group of leaders, not just one region that's going to make all these decisions. That's why that entire group is there. Also, again, we do have SCA staff supporting this. We would caution and advise over having an event in one place over and over and over again. Right. So with
also to that, I mean,
yeah,
what's going to be really important is in this selection process, as the community and membership vet these individuals and choose who they want to vote for, ask those kind of questions throughout that. Like that is going to be a key part of this type of engagement, that they're not being just, focused on their industry or their segment of the industry or their localized community, that based off of those roles that exist today, they're engaging the voice. And even if there does come a circumstance where an individual can't host it in one area compared to another, finding the right way to still activate that and creating the right kind of structure that encourages that activation, even if it's physically not in that spot too. There's ways of doing that today, and we have that examples of that inside of the association. I think it's carrying forward those best practices that we've learned as a group, but then tailoring them to the marketplaces that they're serving.
Yeah. I think we're a little bit over, but we'll do one more question, and maybe, again, I don't want to cut off any of the questions. Let me actually put this slide up so you have our information. So in case we didn't get to answer your question, please do ask us again, and I'm going to make sure that we can also answer these. So the last question, not that it was the last one asked, but the last question we can answer right now. With all this heavy lifting, does there come any perks? Also, what kind of communication contact will headquarters have with these coordinators, and how often? Is it on the coordinators to reach out to SCA, or will SCA be actively looking for communication with the coordinators as well? Yeah, so what are the perks, you all, what perks come along with doing this type of volunteer work? I'm serious. I think this is a question for you all.
See this bald spot? That's 20 years of volunteering. Sorry.
I think perks is, I guess I would look at it a little differently, right? Like maybe it's not perks. Maybe it's the reward in kind of identifying that there's an opportunity here and being part of the leadership that moves it forward. And all similar to everyone else on this panel, there isn't always a perk or something that's obviously a perk. It's a lot of work, and some of these roles are a lot of work. And I think what's always been the reward, and why I continue to participate as a volunteer in a wide variety of ways, is that there's something more meaningful here, not only in things that maybe aren't as obvious, like my network has continued to grow, my education, my understanding of how different communities function, my abilities, even on a very personal level, to communicate with folks that have different values than I do. All of that I find very enriching, and why I continue to engage in the association. And that would be the focus that I would have of, and really, and the reason why I think this is pretty exciting is that this is another type of enrichment based off of engagement, based off of volunteerism, and based off of an association that has a very special place in my heart too. I think that this is a new way to engage, and I think it's pretty exciting. Not everybody volunteers for those reasons though, and I think that's an important part of even wanting to put your hat in the ring too.
Yeah, I think yeah, everything Marcus said. I mean, I think for me, geez, 11 years ago when I started getting involved was because I didn't see a community around me, but then I saw one on a bigger scale. Now, I don't know, 10 years later, like, you know, I have so many amazing friends come from that, very close ones, but then also professionally, just being able to communicate and interact with people from all around, even when it is locally coming through. But I think the biggest perk is to be involved and like see the change that you are creating, because that's what you want to see.
For me, it is working with people and maybe connecting them to something that they are looking for. And I find that I started with the Roasters Guild in, I think it was 2013 or 2012 maybe. And I was so afraid, to be perfectly honest. I was a production roaster at Blue Bottle. I had no money. I had a kid. I was like, why am I doing this? You know, but the idea that I could represent people like me on the guild was important to me. To be able to, for everyone to know that, you know, to speak to things that I thought were important, things that I wanted to see the guild or, you know, SCA provide me, right? And that was my initial interest, was just that. And but as now 5 years later, or maybe 6, anyhow, 6 years later, I know so many people. I've built this like connection of friends. Like there's these opportunities, and they're my favorite opportunities, are when someone is looking to connect with someone, and I'm like, I know exactly who you should talk to, you know, and I can connect them with something, and then sometimes something really beautiful happens, you know, and being able to help everyone facilitate their, or launch their careers, or you know, fulfill their dreams, or, you know, accelerate whatever progress on whatever project they're working on, has been really exciting for me. And I don't even have to do anything except for introduce them. You know what I mean? So I think if for me, it's community building. I feel that I become a better person when I learn about other people and when I help them. People help me all the time. And so being able to be an active member in people, you know, creating great, amazing things around me is probably the biggest benefit.
Thank you. I know our other panelists had to leave, and I know many of you do as well. So we will we'll wrap up here. I think you can see our links here that you can connect with us, keep talking to us, attend one of those info sessions, host one. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to all of our panelists.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.